Down here in Cedar Bayou, here in Mesquite Bay, the whole Matagorda side, back shoreline here, all the way over to the little Texas Parks and Wildlife little structure that's here, up here to the point of Bray Cove, all the way up into Bray Cove, some of the back lakes there, and into Little Brundit, those areas in here. All this great amount of bait that's been working in these areas. You've got edges that are in here. You've got the perfect amount of structure that's working in here, grass, a little bit of squishy mud, hard packed sands. You've got shale. You've got everything that you need to find and locate you some fish up here. And the great thing about this time of the year is we slide further into September, and we're going to transition over to October here in a couple of weeks, is you've got redfish that are starting to group up some of these areas. You can find little small pods if you can be able to get into some of the back lakes. Like I say, our tides have fluctuated again up and down, but for the most part, they're still holding pretty well and doing okay, holding water in there for us. But it gives us a little bit more, little by diverse areas to be able to get to locate and to fish in some of these that maybe haven't been. But like I say, we've had a good amount of water that's been holding in there for us. But like I say, we're fixing to have the migration as far as the redfish are fixing to start moving out to the Gulf for laying eggs and breeding purposes and the whole 9 yards that way. So you can, if you can get in some of these little back lake areas or maybe some of these shorelines here, whether it be up in Mesquite or other areas, you can find and locate you some small pods of redfish. If you want to run out to the surf, get out of here in Cedar, get out there on the front half on that side out there on the Gulf side. You can get up and walk up and down the shoreline, or if you want to try to run your boat all the way through there and get up and down the shore, up on the beachfront, you can locate you some fish there. Find some birds that are working up and down that shoreline, and they're a pretty good indicator that you're going to have some opportunities that come along that way. And just kind of locate and find your fish. All up and down the channel here, there's been lots of people that's fishing the gut, fishing the edges. You've got lots of opportunity that are all up and down that shoreline edge there, good wading areas. On the point over here, Cedar Flat on this side as well. You can work all that shoreline there. There's been a decent amount of fish it's been holding day in and day out there. You can scratch some out depending on the size of your group and everything. We've had some pretty decent days up here on both of these flats, on the Matagorda side and the St. Joe side. So working those, finding the edges over the grass. Topwater has still been pretty good. We're still getting opportunities with the topwater baits early. And again, as that sun begins to rise and starts getting up into that midday around 9, 10, 11 o'clock, it starts to kind of fade out a little bit. You'll still get a few swirls or slaps or whatever. But transition that thing over to a plastic. The main plastics, the worms and stuff that we have been using, again, 16th ounce jig heads is primarily all that we're using, especially as we're fixing to get into the cooler months that are coming. You're going to want that bait to really glide through your water columns and not just to kind of dump to the bottom in there unless you're fishing deeper edges, and then that may want to change your jig head or weight comparable for that. But, down south's been our go-to. Knocking Tail's been another one right there behind it. Marker 54 has been another one right behind it. Soft Dines, Mirror Lures, the Little Johns have all been good. And again, the topwater bait. And it doesn't matter what topwater, whatever topwater maker that you like, it's been fine. Whether it's been a She-Dog, He-Dog, Spook Junior, Mansfield Knocker, whatever. All of them have been very productive for the most part. In the color scheme, which is kind of matching what our water clarity is. Depending on how much grass that you're over, it's going to have a little bit more clarity to it. It's going to filter that water, depending on if it's not blowing 100 miles an hour, which we hadn't had to deal with a whole lot so far. We've had a decent amount of wind that's been good. And again, you want some wind. 10 to 12 is really good. I think that's ideal, maybe 15. Just kind of depends on the individual and what they really like and what they want. But we've been throwing Big Papa in both the original and burner size in that. And then, of course, the Watermelon Red has been good. Heavy Metal in the Knocking Tail. Rogue has been good. Greenback has been good in the Knocking Tail as well. There's been lots of flavors. White Ice, Bone Diamond have both been very good for us. Starting to light up into those. Those might be something that you're going to want to keep in your box, is both of those particular flavors. Something a little bit more, probably a little iridescent, a little translucent as well, because some of this water up here has been very clear. So we've really wanted to work that. And the paddle tails have been good for us. Worked a lot of these paddle tails and have lots of good opportunities, man. We found bait just working all big bunches on these flats like that and just working around the edges, working through the middle of it, and you'll pull fish out. The main thing about all these areas here, the majors and minors have been very good for us. So make sure that you're targeting those time frames. You know, we're on the backside of the new moon now. We're fixing to hit our transition days, so you're going to have a little bit of everything kind of go on. Looks like there's potential storm, but it's going to be on the Atlantic side that we may get some effect from that, depending on how close it gets to the U.S. for us. You know, if it gets closer to Florida, it'll probably affect us at some point, but I think that's still a few days out. So just something to keep an eye on at some point as we transition and we continue to move in through our month. Up here on the super flat, starting at the Lydia Ann Channel there as you come around the point, all the way down to around this point here, all the way down to Blind Pass. Man, this whole area, lots and lots of great structure. You've got all different kinds of structure. You've got deeper edges. You've got shallow edges. You've got back lakes. And saying the one thing that like I said, when we have the water influx that comes in, when we get a little bit higher tides and stuff, something to kind of keep about what I talked about in the last video with that storm that's out in the Atlantic. We may get some effect from that, may push some more water into here for us as it gets closer to the Florida coastline. We may get some benefit out of that. But when you get that extra water in here, those back lakes and areas like here off of the super flats is a great area to get into and get back there, especially if you love to throw topwater baits. Get back in there where it's, calf deep to knee deep water, and you can walk in. It's, it's hard as a rock back in some of those areas. A little squishy some places, but most of it's pretty firm. You got lots of grass that's back in there, but it's pretty much a tide predicated place. So it's just something to keep in mind for you, especially if you're going to fish on the super flats and fish around these areas like that. We've got, again, great opportunities that are up and down. It's a long shoreline, all protected from the southeast breeze that we have. And like I say, we haven't had just a tremendous amount of wind that's just blowing us away, but enough. But it takes care of all that for you. You've got, again, a lot of great opportunity, a tremendous amount of bait that's working all up and down the shoreline, so it lends itself to have predator fish in and around that. Again, number one key thing that you got to have is food source. If you don't have a food source working in the area that you want to fish, then you're going to spend a lot of time catching nothing. So make sure that you have that food source in there, and then, of course, if you know what the structure is, you set yourself up. We're fixing to start getting into that time of year where we're going to start transitioning away from hard packed sand once we start getting a little bit more cooler weather that comes in here and we start to see our water temps drop just a little bit. We're still hovering in the mid to upper 80s mostly, some low 90s depending on where it is and how hot the day gets on that particular day. But that's kind of what you're looking at. And of course, as we get into low 80s, upper 70s, then that's going to start transitioning. Those fish are going to start moving to different areas and over different types of structure, i.e. mud. Grass is always going to be your key thing no matter what time of year it is. Year-round grass is always a key. You want to have some type of grass structure in and around the area that you're going to fish along with that bait source. Again, topwater baits have been good. This is the super flats is another great area, man. You can really work a topwater bait because you got lots of opportunity up and down that shoreline from the Lydia Ann down to Blind Pass. Of course, and again, plastics, 16th ounce jig heads, working potholes, working edges, getting on the drop that's out there closer to the center. You can get there. We've had a little bit of northwest wind on a few days. So it still sets up for you. It's just fine. Just depends on where you need to get and depending on how your wind's blowing for you on that particular day. But work all those areas really well. Again, white ice, bone diamond, big papa, watermelon red. Those have been key colors for us for the down south. You can incorporate even a purple rain in there if you so choose. It's another good color for us. And then, of course, you get into the knock and tail, and you've got the heavy metal, which has been really good for clear water conditions for us. The greenback, and then, of course, rogue. Rogue's been good for us throughout the summer, consistent. Some days you catch a little bit better fish or quality fish on any given day. You can get on any particular bait, but anytime that we've ever tied rogue on or put one on our jig heads there, we've consistently caught fish with it throughout the spring, summer, and then as we're getting into the early part of the fall, it's been very good for us. Of course, in the jerk shrimp, you've got those opportunities. You can work that either under popping cork if you want to. Some people like to work those over in the potholes, especially when you got lots of them lined up, which super flats gives you those opportunities. You can really, once you can kind of locate where those potholes are, you can throw those things in there and just kind of work it, bounce it down the edge of it, bounce it through the middle of it, work it over the top of the grass, and it really, we've had some really great opportunities with that particular bait. It's been very productive as well. Again, tides are going to be important. Make sure that you're paying attention to that. And we're fixing to get in the time of year. We're going to start seeing more fronts kind of push into us. Some of them probably be more closer together than spaced out. So those are always weather-wise the stuff that you need to make sure that you're keeping an eye on when you're out here. Majors and minors, again, we're hitting the transition phase as we're headed toward a full moon. So make sure that you keep different size profile baits in your box, so you can, if you have a little lull in your particular fishing and you want to change stuff up a little bit, then it just kind of gives you more diversity for a particular area. Up here on Rattlesnake Point, Pete's Bend, all there behind the old Redfish Lodge, all this area back here that's flat, very nice wading area. You got a little squishy mud in some of those areas, but as you get further out on the point, you got great opportunities out there. You got your hard packed sand, you got some scattered shell there, you got some guts that go through that. Don't have as much grass on those areas out there on that point like this. You got a little bit more back here in the back of Pete's, but it's scattered. But there's enough there structure-wise to help hold some fish in there, at least to explore it, to see if you have opportunities that show up for you as far as fish being in there. Down here in Italian Bend, as we come back around into this, lots of grass in here. You've got great shoreline in here, all great easy wading. One thing to be aware of, we are in teal season, so I know some of these areas probably may have some hunters for you early morning-wise, so something to be aware of. And then, of course, regular duck season's about a month and a half. We get into November, so it's just always something to be aware of. It changes a little bit. But like I said, we're in teal season now, and then we're going to transition out of October, and then we'll get into the full-blown duck season. That's when you really have to pay attention to all that kind of stuff, especially in these types of areas. But you got great back lakes, you got mouths, great area to work your topwater bait. If you want to use it as an exploratory bait or probing bait to see if you get opportunities with it, it's a great one to do. One thing that you can do with that, if you want to take the hooks off of it and just kind of throw it and see if you got any opportunities in there, and you got people behind you, and throw plastics in there to follow it up. And just another view or another angle to which to approach a particular area if you so choose. But it can be productive for you that way. Working all this sand and this edge that's out here all the way down there, one of the kayak launch points right here on this has always been pretty good. Big old sand flat that's out here. You've got some scattered grass that's over that. We've located even some flounder have been pushed up into here as well. Not a tremendous amount, but we pull one out every so often. Maybe an occasional black drum. But the main things we've been working in, again, the topwater baits, your down south and the multiple flavors that I've mentioned earlier. The same thing in the knock and tail, multiple flavors in those. Those three main ones, the heavy metal, the greenback, and the rogue flavor have been most productive for us. Again, put your bone diamond and white ice in your box. Those have both, the last couple of weeks, have been very, very productive for us. Getting lots of opportunities with those particular colors. We fix and transition in the fall. Then you could probably like something like a key lime, which down south offers, and you can probably get it in some other makers as well, but it may not be called that, but somewhere close to that color scheme. And then probably pumpkin seed, another one being watermelon red, has also been a very good flavor for us. Copperfield, those are all down south colors. They've all been very productive, mostly in the original size, in burner shad size. We've done good with those. Of course, if we've gotten into some cleaner and clearer water, we've been throwing the firecracker, have been one. Mud minnow has been another one that's been a good flavor for us. So any of those have in your box to throw. Again, the Marker 54 jerk shrimp, the brown flavor on that. It's got a little bit more brown tint to it. It's been pretty good for us. And again, majors and minors, man, that's the key thing. Making sure you're paying attention to what your wind's doing. It sets you up on a particular shoreline. You do yourself a world of good when you can really know a shoreline and how that wind's going to set up for it, and then you can kind of predict when you can have a major or minor for you that's coming up and incorporate that into your fishing day. and you will see the productivity that continues to happen for you. Scratching them out in between the bite frames, which is great. But then as we get into those bite frames, it's been very productive for us. So always keep that in mind no matter where you're fishing, whether it's with artificial or if you're using cut or live bait, it still applies. It's still a great thing to incorporate. So make sure you utilize that and help yourself with that. Doesn't matter if it's here in the Port Bay area or the Aransas Bay area or Corpus Bay area. It travels. It travels well. Again, the main things that we look for: bait, food source, structure, majors and minors. Main things that you want to do.